Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel, the only gun channel here on YouTube with BDE. That's right, Big Dad Energy. If it's the first week in the new year and you're back at work and your children have already forgotten about their Christmas presents, go ahead and hit that like button. I'm David and I'm happy to be talking to you today about the Canik Rival-S. Now, those of you who have followed the channel and been around for a while know that I am a competition shooter first and kind of grew into a YouTube channel. Canik has been a brand that has been very much catering to the competition shooter, although it's enjoyed by the general interest public. But this Rival-S is really going to be kind of their flagship competitive pistol because it's a steel frame version of their very successful rival. So saying that, I hope I come at this from a different angle. You've probably seen several videos on this pistol now, but hopefully I'm going to give you something that you didn't get in those other videos. And to that point, if you want to see this gun compared to something like the P320 Legion, then be sure to get subscribed to the channel because this gun is going to be featured, I'm sure, in plenty of videos on the go forward. But you'll only see them if you're subscribed, and if you've seen more than one of my videos, I would appreciate it if you could go to thegundies.com and vote for me as your favorite gun reviewer. Look, the fact that I'm not your favorite gun reviewer really isn't important. I just need you to spend all 15 votes on me. I know I like Garand Thumb better too, but just, help me out. Canik as a brand has really impressed me because they have come so far so fast. And initially when they hit the States, they had kind of the value proposition right on what people wanted to pay for a pistol. They got the feature set right. There were a couple little quirks that they had to iron out with the early guns, but they got them ironed out and then they kept going. When they introduced the Elite SC, I really started to take notice of the brand. And then they introduced the Mete series of pistols, and that was significantly better than what they already had, and it really got my attention. And then they came out with the initial Rival pistol with their polymer frame, and I've been a fan and rooting for Canik ever since, because anybody who makes good competition guns, they're cool in my book. The Rival is the pistol that I recommend to people who are interested in getting into competition but don't have a ton of money to spend because it punches way over its weight. But there's a couple features of the Rival, as good as it is, and it is very good. The national champion in 3 of the major divisions in USPSA, that is the sport of practical shooting, shot a Canik Rival last year. So the gun can hang with anything, including 2011s if the shooter is good enough. But as good as this pistol is, there are a couple things you can't really kind of get around as far as a competition pistol is concerned. The first and most obvious is the weight. This is a 30-ounce pistol, and the balance on a polymer pistol is almost always going to be top heavy and potentially slightly muzzle heavy due to the fact that the steel is on the top part of the gun and the steel extends way beyond where your hand makes contact with the frame. And that's important because when you shoot a gun rapidly at speed, what's going to be rewarded is a gun that is really well balanced. And unfortunately, a polymer gun is never going to be balanced like a steel frame gun can be. The second is that polymer frames, and this is almost no exception, almost always have flat side panels, whereas on competition guns, putting a palm swell or a fatter grip has been popular because it provides a better place of contact for your support hand and gets you better traction to help mitigate recoil. So as good as the Rival is, there is no way around it. It can't do those things. So enter the Rival-S. So the Rival-S, I need to give a nickname because I'm going to be talking about both of these guns and it's going to get confusing. So this is the name that they should have given the pistol. It is the Arch Rival. Oh, come on. You guys are sick of the earthquake effect and the laser eyes? Arch Rival. Before diving any deeper on the gun, let's talk about the case that it comes in, because it comes in a Pelican style case, which seems dumb if you don't travel with guns, but a serious competitor will fly all over the country to shoot these competitions, and this is actually a case that is suitable to put your locks on and fly with in your luggage. And what's important about it is that it comes with these foam cutouts. It comes with everything that you could want in the box. It's going to come with the gun, 2 magazines, the little gun-shaped tool with all the tools in it. It's coming with aluminum base pads, mag well, 3 different grips, one of which isn't on the gun, 5 optic plates, the cleaning kit, a holster, and a trigger lock that everybody will never take out of the box and it'll just sit there. But more importantly, on the lid of the box, it's got this plaque, which I will read to you now. Steel is forged by exposure to the most intense heat. Yeah, I'm not gonna read that. It does make my inner power metal fan rejoice, but yeah, I'm not gonna read it. So the Arch Rival, as it comes from the box, if you put the magwell on, would be very well set up for the IDPA shooter. The only thing, and this is a miss, I think Canik should have charged 50 bucks more and provided 3 magazines with the pistol, because at that point the IDPA shooter would be squared away. The US PSA shooter and carry optics could just go get base pads and have a gun that's ready to race for carry optics, and that would be really awesome. But as it is right now, everybody's going to be buying that extra magazine. Good news on the Canik front is that the magazines are now able to get for a long time. Canik magazines are really tough to find in the States. It looks like that supply line has stabilized and you can get the magazines as you need them. A little bit pricey at 35 to 40 bucks depending on which one you buy, but they're there. So starting on the grip of the gun, as I mentioned, the balance is basically perfect, and the grip panels, and it is a wraparound style plastic grip panel, it is very reminiscent of like an M&P type texture, very, very aggressive. I pretty much assumed that the texture was going to be insufficient and kind of slick, but that's not at all the case. Like, it's actually pretty darn aggressive and feels really good. One thing that's really nice about the Arch Rival is they've kind of recontoured the way the grip is shaped in a very good way. Now, the original Rival pistols, Caniks are always this way. They kind of come to a point on the center of the backstrap, so when you kind of squeeze it, you can feel like a line down the center of the backstrap where it just kind of comes to almost like a subtle point, and it's really because of the texture. But the front strap similarly is kind of narrow. It doesn't leave the biggest pocket for your support hand to build a grip. The Arch Rival, they have absolutely broadened the backstrap. There's not the scallop at the bottom of the deal right there, and the front strap is much broader and it's checkered. So the pocket that your hand can get onto the gun and, you know, put a push onto has improved appreciably. But more importantly, somebody like Glock Grips is probably going to start making G10 grips for this. They're even more aggressive and have a palm swell. I'm really excited about that and can't wait to see what it does to this gun. The checkering on the front strap, as mentioned, is actually very, very functional. If you just kind of touch it in passing, you're like, oh, they didn't go hard enough on the texturing. Pick it up and put a good squeeze on it, because it absolutely bites you back, which is what you want from front strap checkering, and this absolutely delivers on that front. Just put a good squeeze on it before you judge it. Moving up to the rest of the controls are not quite fully ambi, but they are ambi capable. The magazine release button, it comes with 3 different selections for paddles to kind of extend the mag button. Guys, this is a 43-ounce pistol, and you may notice I don't have the mag button on there. I'm running the basic mag button, and I would encourage you as a competitive shooter to go ahead and drop that mag button if you can. A very common start in competition is to rest the gun on a table and retrieve it. If the gun's loaded and you press down on it at all, it will dump magazines. But when I picked it up off the table, I dropped a magazine and I was like, you know what, that mag button's too big. The weight of the gun already puts pressure on the mag button, and if you push down on it at all, you will be dropping magazines. I can reach it no problems, and I've got the large back strap installed. That's another thing to talk about. The grips. If you've got bigger hands, take the time to put the large backstrap on. It significantly improves the experience of how the gun sits in the hand. I was actually surprised how much more I liked the grip when I put the large one on. Underneath the grip, what's interesting to find out is it's actually kind of like a skeletonized steel frame. I just found that interesting, swapping the grips out. The trigger, as discussed, is really good. It came on my model at right over 4 pounds. I'm sure at this point, now that I've shot it and been playing with it, it's probably dropped right to 4 pounds or slightly less. But there is basically, you depress the trigger safety, the trigger gets to the wall, and there is visually perceptible creep, but you cannot feel it. It feels super crisp. And then 4 pounds of pressure and very minimal over travel. Reset on the trigger is pretty short. Moving up the slide, you may notice that there's these little black pads on either side of the frame. These are screw-on memory pads that I guess your thumb indexes on, or potentially a memory pad for your trigger finger when you're running around on a course of fire. I suspect, because they're screwed on, that this is kind of leaving the door open for the aftermarket, or potentially Canik's going to do it themselves to release a thumb rest for the pistol. I can't confirm that because I was too lazy to take the thing off, but I'm guessing that's why it's there. And before we move on to the slide, even without talking about the weight and balance of the pistol, all of those features alone are enough to make this pistol appreciably better than the Rival, in my opinion, for a competitive gun. You add in the weight and now the balance of the gun, and in my opinion, this gun becomes significantly easier to shoot. We'll talk about that later in the shooting bit. Talking about the slide, one thing that was really interesting about the slide, this whole theme of balance, is if you actually examine the slide comes to a taper at the front, which means they've removed material. If you look at all of the serrations at the front and back, they're much more usable. The profile of the Rival slide is significantly better as far as in front of the ejection port manipulations, which is where competitive shooters manipulate pistols. You move to the back of the slide and you're trading out the rear sight, which is, you know, a steel plate, for an aluminum optics plate with steel inserts for screws. But more importantly, if you lock the slide to the rear, you can see that there's lightning that's gone on the internal of the slide as well. So they're trying to concentrate all the weight around kind of the center of the pistol. That's important because when you actually go to shoot it, if the rear of the slide is super duper heavy, what that promotes is this in recoil. As the slide travels all the way to the rear, it's going to promote muzzle climb. You don't want the slide being muzzle heavy because when the slide goes forward and closes, it's going to promote muzzle dip. So a balanced slide is going to be more stable and return to the point of aim a little bit better. And that's observable when you shoot a Rival. It's not just the Arch Rival, but the OG Rival does it as well. It returns to zero really well. It's very easy to shoot. So the serrations are great, very easy slide to manipulate. The optics mounting system, as mentioned, has aluminum plates. Now that we're in the age of potentially limited optics in USPSA, and for a long time I've kind of ragged on Canik for providing these little holes on the optics plate. They include a slide racker that screws in there. For the general interest person with compromised hand strength, that's going to be a much easier way to rack the slide, but for everybody else, it's basically illegal in competition. But in this new limited optics division, it will become illegal. So Canik has actually been in front of the curve for years. The sights that come on the gun from an iron sight perspective are the best sights that you can put on pistols, which is a blacked out target rear that is adjustable and a fiber optics front sight. The optic I've got mounted on here is the Canik MO2. I haven't shot it quite enough yet to do the review yet, but basically it's like a Vortex Venom, but it's got a bigger window, a more robust shroud, and it's cheaper. So it's looking pretty good for the optic, but check back to the channel if you want to see more on that. The finish on this gun is a hard chrome, and some of you guys like it's too blingy. Like, this is actually the finish that you want on a competitive shooting pistol. Not only is it pretty, but it's the hardest wearing weapons coating you can put on, and a gun that's going to go in and out of the holster a lot. It's very important to have a good weapons finish, or else what ends up happening, like the old Rival has a Cerakote style finish, and because the slide has all this, drama going on with all these slide cuts, all the high points on it that rub in the holster will let the Cerakote start to rub. I shot this in like 2 matches last year and filmed with it and all that kind of stuff. Didn't shoot a ton with it, and already the high points, and there are a lot of high points on this slide, have started showing wear. Now, it doesn't bother me any because these are competition pistols, but dudes like the Yankee Marshall are probably going to get really upset about that. Now, as far as shooting is concerned, both of these guns had new optics mounted, and I took them out and I zeroed them. I shot this gun first and thought, this is going to be good. I'm just going to get this zeroed, and then I'm going to zero this bad boy. First and foremost, both of these guns are laser beam accurate. The new Caniks have amazing accuracy, and it's actually kind of silly how well you can shoot these pistols if you have good technique. The frames promote good technique because the way the triggers are set up with braking at 90 degrees, it's very easy to control that trigger due to the knurled face on the dingus. You have great traction on the trigger face and kind of pull it straight to the rear. That promotes shooting the pistols accurately, and the guns are mechanically accurate themselves. But shooting this gun first is like, okay, I see how this is. This gun is a little bit jumpy. Many people, and I think I said it in my review as well, have noticed that it's a little bit jumpy, but it returns to zero really, really well, which is more important than being jumpy. This gun is nowhere near as jumpy and returns to zero just the same. It was immediately obvious just zeroing the optic that this was going to be a much more pleasant and tame shooting experience. This gun immediately out of the box is going to go toe-to-toe with all of the heavyweight competition guns that are already in your mind. The Shadow 2s, the Stock 2s, the P320 Legions, all of the heavy guns that are very competitive and very popular. This gun is immediately going to challenge them because many people will probably find this easier to shoot than some. Screwing around with this gun on a single target shooting devils, it was very, very controllable. I was shooting at about 15 yards, so I could see how my shot pattern would open up. A USPSA target, I was able to keep everything in the A zone immediately, and as I learned how to grip and pull the trigger, I was able to shrink it down pretty quickly. The learning curve to shoot this gun well was very, very small. So then I immediately switched into using the provided holster and trying some draws, seeing if the heavyweight gun had any sort of disadvantage against the lighter weight gun. It's generally agreeable that all the gun handling stuff on a lighter gun is going to be a little bit easier. First, let's talk about that holster again. You need to set the retention on that holster to be almost non-existent if you're trying to go fast, because the holster will bind on the gun.
I'll be lucky to do 1 1/4 draws with this holster. Ah, let go!
Once it binds, it does not.
The holster provided is serviceable, but if it were me, I would probably look to a higher end Kydex kind of holster for this gun, just because there is so much geometry going on with the slide and you don't want any of that binding. The holster that comes with it is molded very closely to the frame, so if you don't pull straight up on it, it will bind. But I did some unloaded starts on the table because that kind of simulates a reload, and I didn't have a mag pouch. But what I'm happy to report about this gun is, remember when I showed you the skeleton grip? Because there's not a bunch of steel on the inside of the gun, what ends up happening is the mags don't bind. This loads almost exactly like the polymer gun, but it has a steel frame that will take the abuse of mag lips getting rammed into the gun. Yes, you can break polymer frames with excessive reload force. I've got buddies who've done it. But once the gun is up out of the holster and loaded, shooting the gun rapidly and pausing on, I set up this array intentionally. There was a very small plate and then there were open paper targets. This gun, the heavyweight guns, are much easier to stop moving. So what I mean is the lightweight guns are very easy to accelerate off target, but the lightweight guns are much more difficult to slow down and come to a precise resting point. The heavier guns are easier to kind of slow down and stop, so when you do stuff that requires shooting at different cadences, the heavyweight guns are really going to shine. Both guns were super controllable, but this gun, when I had a compromised grip, was generally yielding better results, and that's kind of what you're doing when you get a heavier weight gun, is you're raising the floor of how bad things can be. So the Arch Rival is absolutely amazing. I can't wait to be shooting this more on the channel, doing more content with it. Be sure you're subscribed and you can check that out. I appreciate you guys checking in and watching this, and I will catch you on the next one. Thanks, guys.